Good day, everyone. Welcome to Real Conservative News. I'm your host, Nathaniel Rajkumar. Starting off locally here in Trinidad and Tobago. The industrial landscape at Point Lisas is facing a profound crisis as major petrochemical players warn that their long-term presence in Trinidad and Tobago is no longer guaranteed. How come they wasn't say that all the years when PNM was in office, though? For years, these companies, listen to this, and this is why I asked that question. For years, these companies have struggled with chronic natural gas shortages that force them to run plants below capacity, and therefore it will be reducing the amount of profit they can make. But a recent push by the state-owned national gas company to significantly hike gas prices has pushed the situation to a breaking point. Industry giants like Methanex and Nutrien have openly signaled that these rising costs, combined with the lack of reliable supply, make local operations increasingly uncompetitive on the global market. As multi-million-dollar facilities sit idle and strategic reviews of local assets begin, the government faces the difficult task of balancing domestic energy needs against the risk of losing the very investors that have anchored the nation's economy for decades. The crisis at the Point Lisas industrial estate is largely attributed to PNM administration policy failures, including failed bid rounds that resulted in chronic gas shortages and a failed reliance on the stalled Dragon Gas project. Let's talk about this Dragon Gas project for a little while. It was stalled. Why? Because at that point in time, Venezuela was under sanctions by the United States of America. And yet, remember during the COVID, Delcy came here to discuss COVID with within the videos that I think was PDVSA or something like that, that were high-ranking officials from an oil company. You come here to talk about COVID and bring a set of oil people along with you. That make a lot of sense, Kakash Media and Kakash and PNM Patriots. We all knew what Delcy was here for. And the thing about it is, we could have ended up facing sanctions for that. Thankfully, America did not take any action against us. And most likely, guys, because, of course, back then, most likely Biden was already in power. And Biden didn't used to take action for anything. People could do anything they wanted and get away with it back then, which was wrong. He made America extremely weak and woke. Furthermore, critics argue that mismanagement and a lack of proactive contract negotiations by the government have resulted in higher energy costs and the idled production of major industrial plants. My response: this is why PNM called the general elections a few months before it was due, because they knew people that the economy was going to collapse. They knew it was collapsing completely. They also knew that UNC most likely was going to win, and therefore Kamala would have ended up taking the blame for the closure of these large companies. They knew it. Now they tell themselves, you know what? All right, we know it's going to collapse. Call the elections early. Let us see if we could put the blame on UNC. And if it is, we end up winning, well, we have another 5 years to have fun and play ourselves, as we say here in Trinidad and Tobago. Once they win, they don't care, But they also wanted the opportunity to put the blame on UNC when everything went downhill completely. The mighty Buffin, Ghanaian, PNM, and Kakash Media are extremely devious enemies of Trinidad and Tobago people. They don't care about our recovery or our survival. All they care about is tribalism and serving the 1% agenda. Bear in mind, people, I don't support the present government's decision to raise the price of gas either. But the reality is that UNC inherited a dying economy and energy sector and are now left with the responsibility to fix PNM's mess, just like they had to do in the 90s and to early 2000s. Hopefully, good sense will prevail and all these increased prices and fees will be reduced long before the 2030 general elections. Right now, they probably have to do because they have no choice in their minds. I would have preferred if they had just waited it out and reopened petrochemical, which is the backbone of the energy industry and our economy. And then you would have been able to accomplish certain goals that you want to achieve. But they decided to implement certain PNM policies, like raising the prices of fuel and stuff like that, which is usually against UNC type of capitalist policies. It wasn't a wise decision, but nevertheless, people, they are doing it. because they were left with total, with nothing. Basically nothing. Like, you know how PNM said about the treasury being empty back in 2015, which it wasn't? Well, literally this time around, UNC was left with an almost bankrupt treasury. It wasn't bankrupt, but I'm saying it was close to. Even the PNM high-ranking officials were laughing and asking the UNC officials, the ministers, where are you going to find the money to be able to accomplish these goals? They knew what they left for the UNC to inherit. Nothing. That was what they left for the UNC to inherit. Nothing. The NRCHA, the North Regional Central Health Authority, categorically rejects the false, misleading, and alarmist claims circulating on social media regarding oxygen systems at the Mount Hope Women's Hospital, NICU. At approximately 1:58 p.m. on a temporary low voltage issue affected oxygen line pressure within the system and triggered an alarm. NCRHA engineering and maintenance teams alongside the external supplier was swiftly on hand to rectify the issue, while the standby reserve oxygen supply was promptly activated as part of established contingency measures to maintain the required oxygen flow and pressure to the unit in the interim. So no one ended up lacking oxygen, people, contrary to what the PNM would have been trying to push. Everything I'm telling you is just to try to demonize the government, you know. At no time were patients without oxygen or placed at risk. All ventilated patients continue to receive the requisite medical support and care without interruption. The technical issue was promptly stabilized, continuously monitored, and appropriately managed by clinical, engineering, and supplier personnel in accordance with established operational and patient safety protocols. My response, very short this time: PNM Mighty Morphin Ghanaian Coal Pot Bicycle Patriots are probably responsible for reporting that propaganda online in order to stir up their base.
The weather in Trinidad and Tobago for Monday, May 11, 2026 is expected to be hot, sunny, and breezy with a maximum temperature of 31 degrees Celsius and a minimum of 25 degrees Celsius. The day will start fairly warm with temperatures rising quickly from 25 degrees Celsius at dawn to near 31 degrees Celsius by midday. Expect a feels-like temperature peaking around 34 degrees Celsius due to the high humidity typical of the transition into the wet season. While the day is forecast to be mostly sunny, there is a low chance around 20 to 25% of partly cloudy spells and isolated spotty showers, particularly in hilly or southern areas. Conditions will be generally fair and calm overnight. Temperatures will gradually cool to a low of approximately 25 degrees Celsius. Winds are expected to be light to moderate coming from the east at roughly 5 to 35 kilometers per hour. A mild concentration of Saharan dust is expected in the atmosphere, which may lead to slightly hazy conditions. Mariners should note that seas will be moderate with open water waves ranging from 1.5 meters to 2.0 meters.
Regional news now. During a recent engagement in Canada, President Dr. Irfan Ali highlighted a shift in Guyana diaspora's focus from security concerns toward active investment and home ownership. They mightn't go back home to live, but they want to invest in their country again because they're seeing it's prospering. To integrate overseas citizens into the nation's rapid development, the government has reserved 25% of the new Silica City project specifically for the diaspora to purchase vacation homes and land. Wonderful, isn't it? Additionally, a dedicated diaspora unit has been established within the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to streamline the investment process and reduce bureaucratic hurdles. President Ali emphasized that by lowering barriers to property ownership and business development, Guyana is ensuring that its citizens abroad can play a direct role in the country's economic transformation. Wonderful news continues to come out from Guyana because of Irfan Ali's leadership. A great leader. Not perfect. He is imperfect, of course, but a great leader. During a Youth of Visions Academy gala in Central St. Mary, Member of Parliament Omar Newell announced his intention to introduce a private member's motion to establish a formal legal framework for social enterprises in Jamaica. Newell argued that the government must officially recognize and support organizations that reinvest their businesses and their business profits into social development goals, such as community upliftment and youth empowerment. While Jamaica has an existing draft national social enterprise strategy, the lack of specific legislation often prevents these entities from accessing specialized funding or tax incentives, reduce taxes and whatsoever, lower taxes. By pushing for this national policy, Newell aims to bridge the gap between traditional non-profits and commercial businesses, ensuring that mission-driven organizations have the legal backing to scale their impact across the island, especially in times like this, when Jamaica is still in need of a lot of assistance to recover from Hurricane Melissa. It was widespread destruction, people. When you look at some of the videos, telling you, I will never forget, I follow a guy online and a woman as well, but he did a lot more of these videos from Jamaica. And certain areas in Jamaica, the homes were actually totally covered with water, underwater, I mean, it was really sad to see. It was amazing to see, but sad as well. Emphasis is being placed on the well-being of police officers in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, as the new administration seeks to ensure that officers perform to the best of their abilities. I hope that you do something unlike what Trinidad is doing right now. Train your officers to respect and obey and abide by the law. I don't know how police officers usually behave in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, but I know police officers in general, they believe they are above the law. This comes as Minister of National Security St. Clair Leacock says the police force is moving away from selective appraisals and promotions. He noted that this initiative will be spearheaded by an Assistant Commissioner of Police. Minister Leacock also noted that the police force will work closely with the Police Welfare Association.
There's going to be more and better attention for the human resource development in the police force, the training and development. No shortcuts, full programs of preparations to be able to make themselves good policemen. And the person who's going to be given that responsibility for human resource development, training and selections, appraisals and promotions, and ridding ourselves of the curry favor and the ignoring of the people who have given 20 years service and 25 years service and 30 years service, and are still sometimes constables or acting corporals. That era is going to come to an end.
Nice.
By the diligence and the professional approach that assistant commissioner will pay to. The police welfare must be uppermost at all times. And while we talk about in terms of the work of an assistant commissioner of police with that responsibility, it is the fact that that assistant commissioner of police will also understand he also has to work with the Police Welfare Association, which is headed by lower ranks in the police force. But in sharp contrast, where in the past they were ignored or belittled or not properly treated, the Police Welfare Association will be given maximum respect by the ministry and by the government to do the things that are necessary to motivate and incentivize the NCOs and ranks of the police force. So they know they'll have a voice all the way up the chain, through the Assistant Commissioner of Police, all the way to the Commissioner. It's a new day and a new way of doing thinking.
More than 30 children gathered at the Barbados National Library service on Saturday for a lively Caribbean storytime session with award-winning author Yolanda T. Marshall. The Canadian author of Barbadian and Guyanese heritage shared favorites including Sweet Sorrel Stand and Marching North, using stories of food, music, and culture to explore the Caribbean diaspora experience. Wonderful news coming out of Barbados a lot of times. And remember, it's not always about politics, sir. I like to highlight these types of topics as well.
First, into Elisha's colossal birthday cake. Look at him. He fell right into the massive cake. I don't mind falling into a cake. But look, it's splattered all over the guest's head and their faces. Lisha made a big birthday wish and poof, it came true. The plumpest cherries rained from the ceiling I'm so happy to be in the National Library. There have been many years I've been looking online and I can see my books are housed in this library. And I promised myself that when I visit Barbados one time, I do have to come here and do a reading. I do hundreds of readings every year in Canada, of course, and in the US and different parts of the Caribbean. But today was extra special to be present in Barbados, where my books have a home in the National Library. And it was so wonderful to just interact with the kids who, like myself, are Caribbean-born kids. And it was a wonderful day to celebrate literacy.
Evening. I am so pleased to be part of this SciMix event, which is an actual assessment for the course FSAT 2002, Science Meets Business. So this particular course was developed in an attempt to bring our science students into closer alignment with being entrepreneurs. So we have a collaboration with the Ministry of Innovation, Industry, Science and Technology through their Future Barbados team, who has served as amazing partners throughout this entire 12 weeks of tuition. They have facilitated what could best be described as a series of workshops. We've had partners in the diaspora who have been on Zoom calls, really illustrating all the aspects of developing a product or a service linked to science and taking it to market. Currently, this course is just an elective course within the Faculty of Science and Technology. So any student, usually it's single majors, students that have a single major or a major and a minor, that are usually looking for elective courses. And we make it a habit of encouraging them to take courses that are necessarily outside of our faculty. So oftentimes we would tell them, think about maybe taking a course in management. You never know where you will end up. Or maybe if you're not in the computing space, try a course that is linked to computing. Think about ethics, those types of courses. But then as a faculty now, we recently have taken that mandate on ourselves and said, well, what additional courses, what additional skills, what additional exposure we wanted our students to have. And so this course is just one of those. So we're looking at areas that are linked to our science adjacent that really would help set our students apart in a very competitive world. So if you're a student in Faculty of Science and Technology, and if you are a student that is in need of an elective course, this is an option.
Pathway to ownership. Bahamas Prime Minister Philip Davis says if re-elected, a major focus of his administration will be the construction of affordable housing for essential workers. Davis also pledged to introduce measures aimed at managing rental costs nationwide. Now, this sounds really wonderful. The question is, once again, did this Prime Minister make these types of promises during the last election, and did he fulfill any of them? If he did fulfill, then most likely he's more leaning on the UNC side of governance, which is much better. If he did not fulfill them, then he's more like PNM, who makes a lot of promises during elections and does a lot of work just before elections, and then basically tells everybody to wean off the government afterwards for the rest of their term in office.
Prioritize essential workers, meaning our nurses, our teachers, our police officers, our defense officers. That is why we are building a new affordable housing across the Family Islands and partnering with developers to deliver homes at scale. That is why we are protecting those who rent with mandatory minimum standards and a residential tenancy authority to enforce them. That is why we are launching a social housing acquisition program to bring distressed properties back into the affordable pool. For every Bahamian who wants a path to ownership, this government is going to offer significant increased help in building that path.
International news now. President Donald Trump's rejection of Iran's latest diplomatic counterproposal has cast a shadow over hopes for a swift resolution to the regional conflict. Following weeks of mediated talks through Pakistan, the White House characterized Tehran's demands which included the immediate lifting of oil sanctions and a permanent end to hostilities on all fronts, as totally unacceptable. While the U.S. framework sought a structured 30-day cessation of violence and long-term nuclear concessions, Iran remains steadfast in its refusal to dismantle enriched facilities or accept 20-year restrictions. With both Washington and Tehran standing firm on their respective red lines, the fragile ceasefire in the Persian Gulf faces its most significant test yet, as military tensions continue to rise alongside the stalled negotiations. I'm not going to even pretend as though I'm surprised about Iran's response. Trump's supposed to know by now, no matter how much pressure you're placing on them, even with this blockade, you don't know already, China and Russia and stuff like that finding different ways to still help them. And besides that, radical jihadists like the IRGC and the Ayatollah in Iran, those members of those groups, they are not going to ever give up their ambition to build nuclear weapons in order to be able to destroy Israel and America and other infidels, so-called infidels around the world. They believe that is how they will be able to usher in their Messiah, who's supposed to come and destroy the rest of their enemies, the jihadist enemies, right? The enemies of jihad, or the jihadists, and of course, therefore, conquer the entire world and enforce Sharia law upon everyone, while they enjoy, of course, their X amount of virgins. I can't remember exactly how much. 70 virgins or something like that. Craziness. Total nonsense, madness.
Bible quote of the day. Ephesians 2:17-22 NIV. He came and preached peace to you who were far away and peace to those who were near. For through him we both have access to the Father by one Spirit. Consequently, you are no longer foreigners and strangers, but fellow citizens with God's people and also members of his household, built on the foundation of the apostles and prophets, with Christ Jesus himself as the chief cornerstone. In him the whole building is joined together and rises to become a holy temple in the Lord. And in him you too are being built together to become a dwelling in which God lives by his Spirit.
Folks, that brings us to the end of today's news report. Thanks again to everyone who continues to support my content. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Stay blessed and stay safe most of all. In Jesus' name.